Welcome to Talk Tickers. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really pivotal moment for the oncology sector. Specifically, we're looking at a recent regulatory action from the FDA that's sending ripples through the market. It involves a company called Revolution Medicines, ticker RVMD.
That's right. And this isn't just a minor update. They received Breakthrough Therapy Designation for their drug, Zoldonrasib. This is, the kind of validation that can redefine a company's entire trajectory. So our mission today is to unpack what this really means. We're going to quantify the benefit, how much faster this gets a drug to market, and look at the actual clinical data that earned them this win.
Okay, so let's start with the headline news. What's the specific designation for?
The BTD, or Breakthrough Therapy Designation, is for Zoldonrasib in adult patients with non-small cell lung cancer. But it's a very specific group. We're talking about patients with locally advanced or metastatic disease harboring the KRAS G12D mutation.
And these are patients who have already been through the standard treatments, right?
Exactly. They've already been treated with checkpoint inhibitors, the anti-PD-1 or PD-L1 therapies, and platinum-based chemo. So this is a tough-to-treat, later-line population.
What I think is so significant and what people need to really focus on is that this is the first BTD ever granted for a drug targeting RAS G12D.
It's a huge milestone. And for Revolution Medicines, it's actually their third RAS inhibitor to get BTD status. That's not just a win for one drug. It's a massive validation of their entire scientific platform.
When you say RASN, just to clarify for everyone, that refers to the mutated, always-on state of the protein that drives the cancer, correct?
Precisely. It's stuck in the on switch, just telling the cell to divide, divide, divide. Getting a third BTD for this type of inhibitor is the FDA basically saying you are consistently succeeding at hitting targets that have been considered undruggable for decades.
Okay, let's step back for a second and talk about the BTD mechanism itself. Why is this designation, which came from the FDA Safety and Innovation Act back in 2012, so important for a biotech company's bottom line?
It all comes down to forced efficiency. I mean, the bar to get BTD is incredibly high. You have to show preliminary clinical evidence of a substantial improvement over what's already out there for a serious condition.
And if you clear that bar,
the benefits are transformational. You get intensive guidance from the FDA, starting as early as Phase I. And here's the critical part. You get an organizational commitment from senior leadership at CDER, the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research.
That organizational commitment, that sounds like more than just paperwork. It's an institutional priority shift, isn't it?
That is the absolute key differentiator. And we can actually quantify it. External analyses have shown that BTD status is directly associated with about a 30% decline in the late-stage development timeline.
A 30% reduction. That's measured from the end of Phase 2 all the way to final approval.
That's right. A 30% acceleration is a massive event for any financial model. It pulls forward your revenue timeline significantly.
It's a major de-risking event.
It is. And if you compare it to, say, the standard Fast Track program, which has some similar features like a rolling review, that program alone generally doesn't show the same decline in development time.
So it's that intense interaction between the company and the regulator that's the real driver of efficiency.
It's the secret sauce. That high-level dialogue solves problems faster. And it's interesting, the data showed the efficiency gains were actually even stronger for smaller, privately held companies, but a publicly listed firm like RVMD still benefits immensely.
So the designation validates the science and it greases the wheels to get to market faster. But, none of that matters if the drug doesn't work. Let's get into the weeds on the target itself, KRAS G12D.
This is where the story gets really compelling. KRAS G12D is one of the most common cancer-driving mutations out there. You find it in something like 92% of pancreatic cancers, 50% of colorectal, and 30% of non-small cell lung cancers. For years, the whole RAS family of proteins was the poster child for undruggable.
And G12D was especially notorious. Why was that specific mutation where glycine is switched to aspartic acid so much harder to drug than, say, the G12C mutation that we've seen other companies have success with?
It really boils down to the chemistry of that aspartic acid residue.
Yeah.
Most of these targeted drugs are covalent inhibitors. They form a permanent bond with the protein. But the shape and chemical properties of that specific G12D mutation make it almost impossible to form that covalent bond using traditional approaches. It's a structural nightmare.
So how did Zoldonrasib solve that problem? They call it a tri-complex inhibitor. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, I can try. So think of the KRAS G12D protein as one piece of a puzzle and the drug is another. Normally, they just don't fit together well enough to form a permanent bond.
Okay.
What Zoldonrasib does is it introduces a third molecule into the mix, a natural cellular protein called cyclophilin A. This protein acts like a molecular matchmaker.
A temporary binding partner.
Exactly. The drug first binds to cyclophilin A, creating this temporary complex. This new, larger complex then has the perfect shape to fit snugly onto the KRAS G12D protein. It's like using a molecular vice grip to hold the target in just the right position, allowing the drug to finally form that crucial permanent covalent bond. It's a brilliant chemistry.
That is incredible, and that's the breakthrough. So let's talk about the proof, the data. The BTD was based on the phase 1 trial. What did they see in the lung cancer patients?
The NSCLC data is really impressive. We're looking at 18 evaluable patients, all on the 1,200 milligram daily dose. And remember, these are heavily pretreated patients. Despite that, the objective response rate, or ORR, was 61%.
61%. So that means 11 out of those 18 patients had their tumors measurably shrink.
Yes. And the disease control rate, which includes stable disease, was 89%. An ORR of 61% in a second-line setting for this target. That clearly meets the FDA's substantial improvement criteria.
Okay, that's the efficacy. But what about the other side of the coin for targeted therapies? What about safety and durability? Can patients actually tolerate the drug long enough for it to work?
That's always the critical question. And the safety profile so far looks exceptionally manageable. The drug was well tolerated. The most common side effects were what you'd expect. Some nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, typical GI issues.
And the severity of those.
This is the key. Only 2% of patients had a grade 3 adverse event. And there's 0 grade 4 or 5 events. No one had to stop treatment because of toxicity.
That's huge. The ability to keep patients on the effective dose is everything for long-term outcomes like progression-free survival.
Absolutely. And it's not just lung cancer. They also showed a really strong signal in pancreatic cancer, or a PDAC.
Right, which is an absolutely brutal disease where G12D is the dominant mutation.
It is. The outcomes there are historically dismal. We're talking a median progression-free survival of maybe 2 or 3 months in this setting. In the PDAC cohort, among 40 patients, the ORR was 30%, and the disease control rate was 80%.
A 30% response rate in second-line pancreatic cancer is a major, major step forward. That really validates the mechanism across different tumor types.
It does. It suggests the tri-complex platform works regardless of the tumor's location, which gives RVMD a lot more options moving forward.
Okay, so let's pivot from the clinic back to the financials. We talked about that 30% reduction in development time. How does that translate into actual dollars and cents for an investor?
It fundamentally changes the net present value calculation. For a company in this stage, your biggest enemies are cash burn and time. By pulling the potential approval date forward by 30%, analysts estimate that you lower the total revenue needed for the drug to be profitable by somewhere between 9 and 18%.
So you need to sell less of the drug to break even simply because the money starts coming in that much sooner?
Precisely. Or, look at it another way. The company can now afford to invest about 22% more into its pipeline because that runway to revenue just got shorter. It's real, tangible financial leverage.
And these expedited pathways, they tend to stack on top of each other, right? BTD often comes with priority review and accelerated approval.
That's the trifecta. And the data shows that applications with all three have the shortest average review time of all, just 6.9 months. You compare that to a standard review, which is more like 18.6 months. It's a world of difference.
Beyond the time savings, BTD also just acts as a huge validation signal to the market. It filters for truly high-value therapies.
An incredible filter, yes. First-in-class therapies are twice as likely to get BTD. Orphan drugs are almost 3 times as likely. And cancers, neoplasms, are heavily favored because of the unmet need. Getting BTD confirms that RVMD is targeting the right problems with the right science.
This all sets the stage perfectly for our final segment. And as always, this is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not financial advisors, and this is not financial advice.
Agreed. So let's imagine we're pitching this to a skeptical investment committee.
Okay, I'm pitching. The trade is a clear, long on Revolution Medicines RVMD. Now you challenge me. Even with BTD, this is still a risky development stage biotech. Why is the risk reward suddenly so much better?
Because the market, especially short sellers, was modeling this based on history. They were assuming either failure or at best a very long, very expensive development timeline because of how notoriously difficult the KRAS G12D target is.
So the thesis is all about timing.
It's timing and validation. That 30% reduction in development time isn't a guess anymore. It's a near certainty backed by the FDA. You couple that with the 61% ORR data in lung cancer, and you've just de-risked the two biggest variables, technical feasibility and the regulatory path. The market, in my opinion, has not fully priced in the value of that accelerated revenue timeline. The stock will have to re-rate as they move through the final trials much faster than anyone expected.
It's the regulatory calendar now driving the valuation, underpinned by rock-solid science.
That's the trade. The BTD isn't just a pat on the back. It's a guaranteed fast lane.
That wraps up our deep dive on the Zoldonrasib Breakthrough Therapy Designation. So, to recap the core findings, Revolution Medicines has secured a critical regulatory shortcut for a drug that uses some really novel chemistry to hit the KRAS G12D mutation.
And that designation comes with a quantifiable 30% reduction in late-stage development time, which completely changes the economic outlook for the drug. Add in the exceptional 61% response rate in lung cancer, and you have a major de-risking event for their entire platform.
And here's the final provocative thought for you to take away. The success of a program like this shows that while scientific genius is necessary, it's no longer sufficient. True competitive advantage in biotech today is defined by a company's expertise in leveraging the regulatory framework itself. The BTD process has become as critical to success as the phase 1 clinical trial.
A powerful thought. It's not just about the molecule anymore. It's about the entire strategy to get it to patients.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time on Talk Tickers.